On May 11, 2010, Lyndon LaRouche received a message during a live webcast from a Wall Street insider saying that international financial interests would consider the restoration of Glass-Steagall an act of war. Since the July 11th introduction of the Warren-McCain Senate bill for a 21st century Glass-Steagall Act, that war has begun. And today the term war on Wall Street is being used more frequently to describe Glass-Steagall. With less than 2 weeks remaining until members of Congress are scheduled to break for the August recess, the LaRouche PAC Policy Committee, representing activists and supporters across the nation, are delivering the message that Congress must declare this act of war on Wall Street now. If they fail, and Glass-Steagall were defeated, those members of Congress would be responsible for the lives lost when the people are liquidated in the next great crash. To counter the pressure our enemies are leveraging against Congress, Lyndon LaRouche launched 3 critical flanks during this past week. First, a new PCORA commission must be convened, and criminal prosecutions must be launched. Second, we need a full expose of who in Congress actually belongs to Wall Street. And third, in the wake of what has come to light in the Detroit bankruptcy, we need a list of the crimes committed by Wall Street and its European partners within each state of the Union.
Which is much of what we allowed to occur, we allowed to occur. This notion of self-regulation, this notion of complexity that was...
There have already been 3 major investigations into the causes and culprits of the financial crisis of 2007-2008. The January 2011 Financial Crisis Inquiry Commission, or the Angelides Report, the April 2011 Levin-Coburn Report, and the July 2012 case study of HSBC showing the criminality of the shadow banking sector. These investigations already provide a mountain of evidence that must be revisited by a new special commission appointed by the Congress with the specific intent to prosecute and jail the responsible parties. Criminal proceedings against the investment bankers, insurance magnates, and financial regulators must begin with the relevant congressional committees overriding the Obama administration's policy of too big to jail. The new PCORA Commission will finally address the gross injustice against millions of Americans whose lives have been wrecked by a small minority of government-sponsored criminals who are currently being subsidized by Ben Bernanke to the tune of $85 billion per month. The 1932-1933 precedent was led by the Sicilian-born Ferdinand Pecora, who ruthlessly prosecuted the biggest names in high finance, including J.P. Morgan Jr., Thomas Lamont, the acting director of J.P. Morgan, the head of Chase Bank, Albert Wiggin, Charles Mitchell, the head of National City Bank, Samuel Insull, the utilities magnate, and others. The exposure of the crimes of Wall Street and the public outcry that followed made possible the passage of the 1933 Glass-Steagall Act and other of Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal policies. Further, the famous case of J.P. Morgan's preferred client list exposed the degree to which members of the government, the executive, judicial, and legislative branches were owned and controlled by Wall Street. Thus, Wall Street's representatives, the leading opponents to Roosevelt, were silenced and branded with the scarlet letter that told the world they were nothing but Wall Street whores. During the months that LaRouche PAC has been holding major days and weeks of action in Washington, D.C., activists taking part in the mobilizations have often brought up the same complaints. The office is non-committal. They say they have to defer to their friend on the Financial Services Committee. They tell us they need to look into it more. They reply with a form letter describing what the 1933 Act did. When Lyndon LaRouche was briefed on the more than 40 meetings held last week on Capitol Hill, he set his sights on the noxious role played by the Financial Services Committee under the influence of Wall Street money. LaRouche posed a question. Maybe we should ask if perhaps the members of the Financial Services Committee are benefiting from bribes from Wall Street at the expense of the American people and the U.S. government. A closer look at the recipients of Wall Street bribes shows that the Financial Services Committee is a prime target, receiving in some cases multiple times what the average congressman receives. Financial Services Committee Chair Jeb Hensarling of Texas has already raised $1.6 million for the 2013-2014 election cycle. Maxine Waters, Ed Royce, Scott Garrett, Ed Perlmutter, and Patrick McHenry have already raised well over $200,000 each. It should come as no surprise that none of these representatives have signed on to H.R. 129 to reenact Glass-Steagall. Freshman members of the Financial Services Committee also cash in on their committee assignment. As Politico reports, the 11 freshman lawmakers who served on the House panel raised an average of $322,000 during the second quarter, $100,000 more than the average hauled in by all House freshmen. According to the Public Citizen website, in 2009, more than 900 ex-government officials, including 70 former members of Congress, lobbied for the financial services sector. Today, that number is even greater. More than 940 former federal employees are federal lobbyists, and more than half of the former members of Congress who are lobbyists now work for the financial sector. Loyola Law School professor Jessica Levinson points to the impact of the massive payoffs involved in these relationships. She says, "I think the main gist of the payment is the same. It's, I hope when I'm pushing a piece of legislation, you'll remember me with fondness." LaRouche warned that members of Congress should check their own self-interest. "It's not just the American people," said LaRouche. "Wall Street doesn't care about you either. They'll kill you too."
You got all 50 states, there's a crime going to be committed, major crimes in every state. Have a list of that regularly, of every, a regular report of every state where this stuff is going on. All of this stuff. Don't let it be passed by. Go after them. Catch them at a crime. And always look to catch them. Find out what the crime is they're committing.
Following the July 20th announcement of the third major initiative of the week, LaRouche PAC has begun assembling a picture of the crimes of Wall Street in each state. Detroit is the most devastating case of the template that will be used to manage the inevitable next phase of the financial breakdown. The murder of Detroit, the dumping of the pension obligations, gutting the public sector, and eliminating obligations to shareholders for the sake of paying off the city's creditors is the Dodd-Frank template. Activists across the nation and the Policy Committee in Washington, D.C. have been delivering that message. Until you get Glass-Steagall, Detroit can and will happen again. And when it happens to you, your city won't even get the dignity of a funeral. In committing their crimes, Wall Street has so far been careful not to put all their eggs in one basket. They're committing a variety of crimes in a number of locations to avoid the public outcry. None of the ongoing crimes are merely local or regional, though. There is a single intent and a single crime. Just take a few examples. In Alabama, Montgomery County, the seat of Birmingham, was bankrupted in 2011 by J.P. Morgan Chase interest rate swaps on their planned new sewer system. In Oakland, California, Goldman Sachs bled the city under the pretense of interest rate swaps manipulated through the LIBOR. The public sector has been virtually liquidated to pay the fees, and the police force has been cut, drastically increasing crime. In Pennsylvania, in the wake of a series of city crises, the state auditor general found that 1/5 of the Pennsylvania school districts and 86 government units had entered into interest rate swaps and were ultimately saddled with $14.9 billion in total debt related to the financial fraud against them. This investigation by LaRouche PAC will continue, as will the push to enact Glass-Steagall before the congressional recess. For this mobilization to be successful, we have to move on these initiatives and throw our enemy, Wall Street, into disarray. What is reported in the press and what the Policy Committee has reported from Washington is that Wall Street is already mounting a counterattack to Glass-Steagall. We're not going to take them head on. We're going to hit them on the flank. Call into the LaRouche PAC National Center to find out what you can do to mobilize on these fronts and win this fight. Our enemy has made their policy clear. It's mass murder. There's no safe way to play this. There's no peaceful position you can adopt. It's either Glass-Steagall or die.